All right. So we have Vicki Gourley from
Uh,
OKC Friday. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Cindy. Hi, Margaret. Brent.
At OKC Friday, we have Cyndy Hoenig, who's I call her PR guru. She probably gets tired of me saying that, but that's the name of or PR rock star, because that's the name of her book. And then we also have Brent Skarky, and he is with KFOR. And you're also a bureau chief for the legislature. And I'll let you explain that. I'm probably not saying that right. So I'll let you explain that. But all three of them have been in traditional media for decades, in what I like to also call legacy media. I don't like the word old media, because legacy, well, it sounds better, but also it really is legacy. These people have put time and effort for decades bringing you stories and content that they're just now called stories and content. It used to be called the news, right? And so, but now it's stories and content. And so, but they've been doing that for decades. It was just called something else, but it's still the same thing. And so we're going to talk about that today, and why you should even bother with traditional media. You know as well as I do that there's a lot of nastiness online about fake news, and these people are working really hard at their jobs just like you do. And I just don't get that they would be doing fake stuff. So they're going to shed a lot of light on some of that, a little bit of that, but it's really why you should bother. They're going to answer those questions. And so I'm going to let Cyndy really quick give a little brief synopsis about herself, and then Vicki, and then Brent, and then I have Brent's going to start off. I'm going to start off asking Brent questions. So go ahead, Cyndy.
Hi, I'm Cyndy Hoenig, and I'm Oklahoma City. I got my start in PR in Los Angeles, and I at a big PR agency there. Kind of faked my way in with my big personality.
Oop.
And some connectivity issues there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also own half of the Media Insider marketing agency for media with Margaret Kroom. And so that's who I am. And I've been doing PR since the early 80s.
All right, go ahead, Vicki.
Hi, I'm Vicki Gourley, and I'm the publisher of OKC Friday, which is an all local news, legal newspaper for Oklahoma City, and been at this for 46 years. Started out as a columnist, and we cover schools and social gatherings when there are any, to raise money for nonprofits, and are very actively involved with 10 high schools in our area and all of the nonprofits.
Okay, go ahead, Brent.
My name is Brent Skarky. I am currently the weekend news anchor, weekday reporter at KFOR, which is the NBC affiliate in Oklahoma City. She mentioned that I am the Capitol Bureau Chief. Basically means I'm the political reporter for the station. During the legislative session in Oklahoma from February to May, I am at the Capitol 4 days a week because they don't meet on Fridays, but that's kind of my area of expertise. I was started off as a sports guy. I was a sports anchor for 10 years, local media in Oklahoma City. Went out to Los Angeles for a while, did some show hosting, came back, did some more news stuff, worked for Ackerman McQueen, which is a large advertising agency in Oklahoma City for 7 years, hosting an online travel show, which was kind of ahead of its time, shall we say, with the online only programming. And then I've been in the news, back in the news for 4 years now. So that is my story.
Okay, I'm Margaret Kroom, and my connection to Oklahoma is I went to Oklahoma Baptist University. I married in Oklahoma, and he went to OU. He's from Pauls Valley. And I've done all kinds of business in Oklahoma for decades, and still do. My son went to college in Oklahoma as well, and a bunch of my nieces did as well, and they still live there. So that's my connection. My background is information technology. So I'm the one that's on the internet, and my background is with EDS and IBM and all those big. I even worked on the Enron account before it was bad. Those types of things. So I'm a technology digital person, but also I call myself a communication strategist is really what I do. And so that is how I got involved with Cyndy years ago. We met on Twitter actually, and we've been going at it and doing businesses together ever since. And so this is our latest, the Media Insider. And one of the things about the Media Insider, just a little plug for us really quick, is that there's all kinds of databases and list buying services out there. And what we do is we just do the state of Oklahoma, so you can create a relationship and work with them to make sure you have all of the details of who to contact based on what your story and content is. So that's what we do. So let's start off with Brent. And so we're going to talk about legacy media versus modern journalism. And my question that I thought of for Brent was, what attracted you to TV and why do you stay?
I got into, well, like I said, I was a sports guy first. I realized probably middle school, high school that I wasn't going to be a professional baseball player. So I wanted to keep in sports, and I did the internships, did radio, was a sports guy for a long time. The sports, the local TV sports business is something that's been evolving for the last 30 years. It is not what it was in the 70s with the advent of ESPN and all the online immediate sports sites. The local presence for local sports continues to shrink on local news. So I got out of the business, did some other stuff, came back to news. There are more and larger job opportunities in news, and that's kind of why I got back into that. I feel like my expertise is being on camera, and also I think as most people get older, they forget about the stuff they like as a kid, and they focus more on the stuff that matters as an adult. And I kind of see that as news, and specifically for me, the political side. That's what interests me. So that's kind of why I have stuck with it, per se. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So Cyndy, how do you retain relationship with the TV media and get them to answer your phone calls?
Well, it takes a little aggression and a lot of assertiveness, plus the fact that you just can't give up and you can't have any fear, about calling. And I have this thing that I do, and I call and I leave 2 voice messages if I'm calling on the phone. And that's all. And then I call until he or she picks.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the personality for it too. You have to be able to, you have to be friendly and respectful. And when you get them on the phone, your first words should be, are you on deadline? Is this a good for me to talk to you? But also what really seals the deal, I think, is giving them good information and good stories and helping them do their job, because they can't think up all the stories by themselves, find them somewhere. And so that's part of my job, is to not just fulfill it for the client and get them coverage, but my job is to come up with different media angles and different ways to pitch the same story. That's how I've done it. And plus I've had a lot of time on my hands doing this and calling journalists and making friends and, taking them out for coffee or, whatever I need to do. Or quite frankly, sometimes I've called and said, what are you looking at? What are you looking for? What would be your greatest story, or what would be a coup for you? And I think that they appreciate that.
Yeah, those are really good tips. And that goes back to knowing what they cover as well, right?
Exactly. And that's one thing in the Media Insiders. What we do is we say in there what they cover and what their, what their beat is, if you will.
Right.
And then you make these friends, and then they trust you. Like Brent and I have known each other for many, many years, and Vicki too, for practically 40 years that she's been here. We've known each other, and I think that those two at least understand that I'll usually give them a good story. And my stories are pretty good. Vicki usually puts them on the front page.
You are very good.
That's a great segue to Vicki. So Vicki, one of the things that is said about newspaper is it's old media style. So my question to you was, how have you maintained your hyper-localism? Because that's really what OKC Friday is hyper-localism, which I absolutely love. But how have you maintained that hyper-localism?
It really is not difficult. The local news is there, but it's not big news for Brent to put on television. Sometimes we have a story that is, but we have very few murders in Nichols Hills in our area. But we keep close contacts. Sports, Brent wrote sports for us for a while, and all of our sports editors have continued to keep close contact with the local high schools. And I think we have 6 private schools and 3 public school systems that we cover. And so we're wall to wall with not just football, but with their soccer and their field hockey and their basketball, and know all the coaches. And that's an important part. That's the part that really draws the younger people to us. Mother and dad likely now appeared in the paper when they were in high school themselves. And so they're already familiar with it. And people like to have a clipping to cut out to send to the grandparents and things like that. So through the schools and through fundraising galas, we cover them wall to wall. We will pre-publicize the event for United Way, Allied Arts, whoever it is. And then we go to the event, we take pictures, and we cover it afterwards. And everybody always wants to see who was there. And the men, not so much, but the women, what they were wearing. And we just stay very in touch and totally focused locally.
Well, one of the things, you and I were chatting years ago one time, and you were telling me how many people outside of Nichols Hills take the paper. So it's a great resource as well, especially for businesses, since that's what we're talking about, is getting businesses more involved with traditional media. And you were telling me how many people take that. So, they can read what's going on and see business leaders that, hang out and the different things that they participate in. Do you want to, speak about that?
I have a funny story. We were talking about Cyndy's stories earlier. We had a very aggressive investigative reporter at the Oklahoman who was always digging up dirt and corrupt politics and this kind of stuff, Jack Taylor. And we were over at his house, invited us over for hamburgers, and we were sitting there talking. And I said, with all the dirt and high time politics you're always digging around in, Jack, why do you take Friday? And he says, because I want to see who's hanging out with who.
Smart.
That's right.
Very smart.
That's true.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I add one thing to Cyndy's thing real quick? She's talking about developing relationships with reporters. That is big. That is very big. If someone trusts what you are telling, what you are hearing from them, like if I trust Cyndy that she's doing this legit, she's not going to lead me astray, all that's big. And developing those relationships are big, because just sending that email to the assignment desk person or just whoever gets that generic email, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to get noticed the way it should. But if you make a call to somebody personally and then get that person invested in that story. If it is truly a story, if it's a ice cream stand that's opening and it's their 75th location in the metro and all that stuff. But if there's a story to go along with it, that's when our ears perk up, and that's when it has a potential for some true coverage, a true story about it. If there is an underlying story of, I don't know, a veteran opening his first ice cream shop because that's what he's always wanted to do, or something like that, something that either pulls at the heartstrings or is truly meaningful behind it, that kind of story will get, it makes us happy because it's a good story, but it also probably would make the client happy because it gets the coverage that they're looking for as well.
Well, on that point, we're going to cover this in another question, but on that point, so I subscribe to the email for the Journal Record. And so I brought it up this morning, and based on what you just said, let me tell you what's intimidating that you might be able to address, Brent and Cyndy. So you look at the headlines in the Journal Records email, and of course, it's, the top one is about the Oklahoma governor getting COVID. And then they talk about oil and gas. And then they talk about final approval for a Norman hotel. And then about a meat processing plant. And what's intimidating about that is local small business will look at that and feel they will never, ever cover anything I have to say, because that's intimidating, because they don't consider what their story is as big news as these things. So can you guys address or talk about those kinds of things and how to overcome that? Because I know it's a fear. It's why they feel like they're wasting their time.
Cyndy, you want to go first?
Yeah. In fact, I was going Margaret and a company called Boot Rocks, which, and it's very simple, small business, online, sell boot covers for women's boots. And so you only have to buy one pair of boots, and then we have 65 tails that go over the boots that look just like your boots. And we launched that March 4th. And it was a pandemic. And so I just got a story on Boot Rocks on Channel. Galen Culver did it. And this business was put in Margaret's and my lap because of the company that was owned originally by this person who just simply gave us this company. Was she was selling at a festival, country music festival there, and she has a severe case of PTSD. And so I knew her, and she wanted to trust me with this company, so I brought Margaret in. So we need a story. We're launching to start all over, and so I send a pitch out, and this is what the pitch is. You have to be really clever about how do you do this. The pitch was the business that wouldn't die, because it didn't die in Las Vegas with the shooting. And then we had the pandemic. So we go through two really bad things. So, and Galen Culver thought that was really a different angle to go with it. So we did that. That was a great story on Channel 4 that just ran 3 weeks ago. So you have to be very clever. And with a small, and every business has a story. We all know that, but just most client people don't know how to find it. So you have to just kind of dig in there with different angles and you will find it. And if you don't have a story, if you can't find it, you create your own news by doing charitable or hooking up with there and that sort of thing. So a million different ways to do it, which is why I have a job, because I help come up with that sort of stuff.
Margaret, excuse me, let me interrupt for just a minute. Cindy's cutting in and out on me, and I'm not hearing half of what she's saying.
Yes.
Go ahead, Brent. I just
Connection.
aware of that.
It's on all of our ends, I think. But I think she brings up a good point that she knew specifically. She went to Channel 4 and she went to our place. to talk specifically to Galen Culver because she knew that Galen would do those kind of stories too. And I think that's important, knowing the people in the market and what kind of stories they do, because if you come to me with that kind of story, I can't do that. That's not my wheelhouse. It's not politics. I also do the more hard-hitting stuff that leads the 5 and the 6, but Galen does those stories at 5. And for a client like that, to have that story done, yeah, maybe not everyone sees it in the 5 o'clock for Galen, but then you have that story, you have that link, and then you get back into the website, and that's extremely valuable, I'm sure, for clients out there.
Well, you have video content for your website, for your social platforms,
and
then
proof of performance for your website too. Just like, hey, this is look at this. We were just on XYZ, you know.
Well, yeah, and just the link, not to get too digital, but just the link back to KFOR, as well as many hits as they get, that is great. So you can't just, say, oh, well, it's on at 5, no one's going to watch it. You're absolutely right. Just like what we're doing here right now is for, people to watch on their own time. And, but it's still providing a great service of information. So yeah, great stories.
Also, if I want to switch that up and get, which I probably will, I would have a different angle for Vicki at the Friday newspaper, pictures of my girls in boots at a party or some sort of social thing like that would be the PR I would get for the Friday newspaper.
Right.
So Vicki, be watching out.
So so Vicki, there will always be a Friday in the week. And so to me, you're the page 6 of Oklahoma City. That's kind of what I call you. And so how are you maintaining print in a digital world?
Well, we have a website and that we post on, and we have print replica. And I was just checking our Google Analytics, and they're down in the summer, actually since March, because school's out. And our younger readers usually look at the website, and their parents are reading the print and want them. But it's very important. I feel like someday they probably won't still be printing, although I see a lot of magazines doing really well. So it appears to me that the more specialized you are, the better you do with print.
Well, and in your business as well, one of the things that are very popular are subscription box services where women get boxes full of stuff and then they unbox it on social media. So in that light, one of the things with magazines as well for everyone to remember is that magazines, they said they would go away when digital came around. I don't like to look at my magazines on digital. I want to touch and feel and look and sit and have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or whatever. And I think that's coming back. So just to be able to wait every single Friday, to go outside and to get your paper, I don't think that's a lost art at all, personally. And and I know I'm older, but when you see these young people unboxing things they get in the mail, it's the same thing. I mean, it might be crazy, but I think it's the same thing. All right. So Cyndy, Brent is politics and Vicki is page 6. How do you convince a client to use both for the same story? You've kind of answered a little bit, but
yeah,
you have the very same story. You just talked about boot rock. So just reiterate that a little summary of that, because that was a good point.
Well, yeah, you have to have different angles. Page 6 with Vicki on page 6, I would send, social info like party info, fundraising, if we're having a celeb driven party or a fundraiser, would send that party to page 6. And with Brent, I would send him the news facts, the political, the hard news is what I would send to Brent, and the soft news to Vicki at page 6. And, but you always have more than a couple of media available just in case the first couple, I always have 3 at least available in case they don't like the first 1 or 2 for everybody that any news person that I would pitch. You got to have more than.
I found a quote.
Did you want?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
You are
through. Go ahead.
a little bit back and forth, so I don't know when you stop and start.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I found a quote online. I'm going to read it. It's from Pew Research Center. And the quote is, news is a part of the explosion of social media and mobile devices in a way that could offer opportunity to reach more people with news more than ever. And it was just the point we were making a while ago with Brent, is that repurposing all those different things. And that's what, to me, that's what, when they say, you know, legacy media, traditional media is old news, but it really isn't, because you have to think that they're repurposing themselves too. You know,
Absolutely.
And one of the questions I didn't put on here, Brent, that I wanted to ask you is, what is your opinion? Because I know that media has to pay the bills. What is your opinion about paid reading on news sites?
I mean, the lines have definitely blurred in the last 25 years when it comes to advertising and media and journalism. You definitely see all formats sponsoring things. Sports will be sponsored by your Ford team dealers, and you've got what's right for our schools sponsored by this bank or that bank. So there's a lot of actual in-show advertising that goes on nowadays, because as the markets continue to shrink, they've got to find ways to generate revenue. It doesn't bother me that much. As long as it says paid on it, I don't have a huge problem with it. Now there are different scruples for different websites when it comes to paid. Some are very upfront with it, others are not at all. I think as long as some kind of mention is made fairly upfront about it being paid media, it's fine. You've got to pay the bills at some point.
Right. Well, I meant more that so a lot of the different national news, you have to pay to read their article.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought, because with a website like the Oklahoman always has a paid story per se. I think that's the way everything's going. As you see it with the Netflix and all the subscription cable services, as everything shifts around, you got to start paying for what you want. And I think that's going to happen more and more.
People are more used to that than say baby boomers are used to that, but it's like Vicki said, it's no different than having a subscription newspaper come to your door. You're paying for it. So.
No doubt. And the newspaper subscriptions are getting more and more expensive, and the subscriptions to their online formats are getting more and more expensive too. It's just, if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it, and everything's not going to be free like it used to be. So, just because the total ad dollars on the back end are just not there for those places to still make their money without charging more up front.
So one of our attendees today, Sarah, welcome, Sarah. Thank you for making a statement. So I wanted to read her statement because it's true. She says, the Journal Record has an editorial calendar. Pitched to the calendar in today's paper was a focus on the business of agriculture. The boot covers would have been a perfect story for today's paper.
Wow.
Yeah.
Missed that one.
Agriculture, I absolutely see the connection there. So thank you, Sarah. So to advance the conversation about how you get into a national news story, I had made mention to Brent that, everyone knows that Kanye West has created the birthday party. And of course, that was major news everywhere, unfortunately. And but how does a local business jump into a local political headline and get coverage?
That's for me.
Yes.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with, you've got to find your angle for it. What part of your business, what part of your story that you want ties into that. Kanye West is yesterday, the Oklahoma election board officially recognized him as a candidate for president in Oklahoma, so he will appear on the ballot. They tweeted that out. I don't know if that's the perfect story to try to tie into, and I was going to bring this up when I saw some of your questions earlier.
I was
It's
just being sarcastic.
no, I know, I totally understand. Okay, so in the 90s and the 2000s, it was big for local news to try to localize a national story.
Mm.
And the example I always use, I went to Syracuse University. I'm from Oklahoma City, went to McGinnis, went to Syracuse. When the bombing happens, I'm a sophomore at Syracuse, Oklahoma City bombing, for those out of state. Within like 2 hours, I got a call from each and every local station in Syracuse wanting to talk to me because I was the only kid from Oklahoma City at Syracuse. So they wanted, what's Oklahoma City like? How do you feel? Blah, 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 blah. And that was a good example of how we would always localize a national story. We just don't tend to do that anymore. So that used to be a pretty good in probably for a business to localize, I don't know, insurance rates are through the roof nationally because of the Fed raising whatever, what the specifics aren't, but I'm a local insurance company that's not raising rates. That would be an easy in. We don't tend to do that anymore. So you got to be more creative on that story side and find a true story, a pulling out your heartstrings or something that really hits and affects people side to try to localize those national stories.
Is there a reason they don't do it anymore?
The fickleness, I would say, they tend to, across the board, you just run that national story from your national media outlet if it's a big enough story to cover. But I think that the 24-hour news cycle on your CNNs and your MSNBCs and your Fox News, they cover those national stories continually all the time. That's where people go if they want that national story. They want local, they come, and you see it time and time again with your local news too. Local, because they can get that national stuff on 15 different channels 24/7.
That is absolutely correct. It's easy to get that. Okay, so let's talk about with Vicki, and we've already talked about this a little bit, about the networking people can do from reading your paper, so to speak, and your stories in Nichols Hills is a high income demographic. And so what is the easiest way for a business to get a headline story in your newspaper?
Hire Cyndy Hoenig.
Thank you.
She'll come up with a creative angle that fits us. No, just think about what Brent was just saying is not exactly true in newspapers. Both the Daily, used to be the Daily, it's the Oklahoma now, and the Journal Record are owned by Gannett. And they're carrying less and less local, have very, very small staffs now, filling it with Gannett and Associated Press wire stories. I mean, sometimes you can't tell the Oklahoman from USA Today. So where was I going with this? How do they get in our paper? Just the fact that somebody is local and trying to start in business in these times, especially, or how they're coping. We've had several stories about how locally owned businesses are trying to cope and trying to stay in business. And we're always looking for those. I don't care about the Gannett Wire. I don't care about the 50 states that comes out of USA Today and goes into the Oklahoma. And most of their stuff I just don't care about, but I do care if it's local.
So Cyndy, did you think of a story from your client list now or in the past what you were able to jump on a national story for locally?
Well,
maybe we'll hear
had an occasion to present a lot of national people, that the story was already national. And so I've jumped on locals before, because one thing that's interesting, a story that I have, is when I was handling Suzanne Summers, and she came out with the Buttmaster companion to the Thighmaster that strengthened the butt muscles as opposed to the thigh muscles. And of course, these guys know that that's a hard thing to. It's like an advertisement. Everyone wants to sell you an ad. So I couldn't get her on TV. The local shows that were, in New York and LA, because they wanted to be paid for advertisement. So I'm stuck. So I was looking and reading every morning, and I see this little town in Yakima, Washington.
Yakima.
Yakima, Washington is having a buttmaster contest. Yes, in their high school gym. And they wanted, and so what I did was I had about 3,000 buttmasters in my office in Los Angeles in these great big giant boxes. And I sent them 250 of those things. And then I videotaped her. Welcome to the Buttmaster contest. This is Suzanne Summers. Get ready, get set, go. And for them to play in their gym to surprise all these people. So that got me, it got me a lot of outlets picked up, the affiliates picked it up, and so it went all over the United States. Suzanne Summers hosted a contest, and we sold out of those things. And so that's just one little way, because when I look at the news and I read the paper, I'm looking for things I can tie into, or ideas that I can, pull off for a client of mine, a different media angle or story or something like that, because you run out of ideas and then you have to create your own news, get some coverage. I mean, I've done that with different news, and and it's juice. It's got to be juicy. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be important, and so that's Grace.
So I want everyone to go around and do a little wrap up of anything you might have thought of that you wanted to talk about or say, before we wrap this thing up. And so we'll start with you, Vicki.
Okay, I think that you're talking to people who are looking to get news stories, and people who do the news need advertising. And so you're talking about ways to be really clever and either localize it or nationalize it if it's a national company. And that takes creativity, but above all, it takes honesty. Burn me once on a story.
Yes.
And that's it. You can't just fictionalize the whole thing and expect not to be exposed about it. But make it interesting, make it fun, develop relationships like Cyndy and I've had for all these years. And it's possible. It's possible to get coverage, and especially if you spend some dollars with them too.
Well, yeah, the title of our topic today was Why Bother? Because there's a lot of people are like, well, they never pay attention to me. But a lot of times, like Brent said, it's because you just emailed something to someone that you haven't developed a relationship. So what were you going to say, Vicki?
Oh, the thing about Brent and television stations and real newspapers, and from big time down to little ones like mine, we're liable for what we say and what and there is so much. You said fake news earlier, but a lot of times it's not fake. It's advocacy journalism. It's what we used to keep to the editorial page, but now they've find a way to make a story out of their side of it. But all the stuff on the internet, nobody is accountable for that. So I think that traditional media is important because we're all in a business where we're accountable for it, and we better get it right.
Okay, go ahead, Brent.
I still think it's really important to develop that story to tie to the thing you're trying, the word you're trying to get out. The demographic for local news specifically has shifted very well, for national as well. You'll see that as well, has shifted very hard to female 30 to 55, 30 to 65. And I call it the O rule. If it doesn't make you go, oh, or oh, it's not
Wow.
going to get.
I love that. Yeah.
So thinking in those terms, it kind of boils it down a little bit. You know, pull on the heartstrings or something controversial, something shocking, and I think that's kind of a good way to look at it. Does that always fit with a business story? Probably not, but it's some place to start. And like both have said, develop the relationships on the local level, develop the relationships on the national level. It doesn't necessarily take a whole lot of time, but and honestly, the journalists are busy just like you are, and they don't have a whole lot of time to just sit there and chit chat 24/7. But to be reliable and to provide accurate and good information that the journalists can use to do their job better, it's valued by the journalist as well. So developing those relationships.
Right. Okay, Cyndy.
I just want to say, learn to think like a publicist. And what that means is there's no stupid idea. You just
That's true, because Cindy,
I was presenting Edmonds Hospital was, and I noticed nearby Edmond Hospital there was this school that I read about, this little tiny article that some of these children flip-flops on, and I thought that's PR. It spoke to me if somebody could help this school. So at Christmas time, we started in November, and I had Edmond Hospital, all the employees bring one pair of child shoes to the hospital, and we presented those to this on Christmas Eve. They were so grateful. We got major good news out of that. It was several years ago before OU took over Edmond Hospital. That's just a story. You've got that nowadays, everybody needs help, whether it's child hunger or getting tennis shoes for whatever it is. You can find a way in your business to add that to your story. And there you go. You look like a hero.
So with that, one of the things that I wanted to say is upcoming interviews that we're going to do. When Brent mentioned the ooh, the ah, one of the interviews that we're going to do with some journalists is about clickbait. And not saying that what you said was clickbait, Brent, it's just that we're wondering if our story doesn't have a clickbait part of it, or to make it look like that, is the news going to put it out there? Because the more ooh ah you have, the more clicks you're going to get. So we're going to discuss that coming up, as well as and basically talking about sensationalism versus great content, and what causes someone to say the ooh or the ah over your great content opposed to sensationalism, because we all know that sensationalism gets a lot of clicks. We're also going to talk about how to establish relationship with your favorite media. We're going to expand more onto what we talked about today, about a journalist process, their timelines, and their relationship with their directors, producers, or editors, because you have to remember they could be working on a story forever and then it get canned. So, for whatever reason. And so we're going to talk about that, so you'll have a little bit more empathy for the process that they go through as well. We're also going to talk about making your business newsworthy, and also talk about how to partner with different types of media. Like, how do you partner differently with a magazine than you do a newspaper or a TV station? So we're going to talk about that as well. So hopefully you'll join us on our other topics as they come on. I'd like to thank Brent and Vicki and Cyndy for jumping on with us with our first interview series. And You guys make sure you, when we post it, that you repurpose it out onto your own social platforms and help people out. Not only us, but I'm talking about the people, the small businesses that would gain knowledge and benefit from our discussion today. So I'm going to let you guys go. And again, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
And have a great weekend and wear your mask.
You.
Amen.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.